Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with Jeffrey Poole and Joe Lalo, and it's just going to be us this week. We did a show with the three of us a month or two ago, and you guys actually seemed to say that you liked it, or that you like it sometimes when we update you on what we're doing and talking about how we're trying to sell more books. So we're going to do that today. We've all had book launches recently, and we've all been experimenting with genre hopping. So those are kind of going to be our topics tonight. We're going to go ahead and start out with kind of a couple of questions we've gotten from listeners. Actually, this was one from Twitter, and I probably messed it up because I didn't write it down anywhere. But Dale, I hope I got the spirit of the question. And it was, how does your launch strategy differ now than from when you were starting out? Do you guys want to go first on that?
All right, well, it's easy. My first book, I hit publish and I sat back and did squat. Now, actually, what I'm getting ready to publish, I've actually started, messing with, Facebook, advertising. The first for me, and is actually going well. I'll hit up, my mailing list all the same time. It says, okay, as of the end of the month, I'm going to release this thing, and I'll start getting fans, on Facebook, social media, start talking about it, get people hyped about it, and it helps. So yeah, there's a little bit of planning involved there, as opposed to just going, okay, well, here, world, here's the book, and I hope you don't hate it.
Yeah, my launch strategy in the beginning was I kind of thought if a book was published, then people would buy it. So I didn't have a launch strategy. I had a launch, which was enough for me. That was
Doesn't work so well, does it?
No, it doesn't. Yeah, I thought just putting out would be enough. So my current launch strategy, which is different from the launch strategy I'll be talking about later for the most recent releases, is, well, first off, I'm always talking about my books so people know what the next 2 or 3 books out are going to be, because I'm mentioning what I'm working on. And then, usually about 6 months before the intended release date, I will start the pre-order everywhere but Amazon, and I'll announce that via a newsletter hit. And then 3 months later, when I'm allowed to pre-order on Amazon, I'll announce that. I'll do that, and I'll announce that on a newsletter hit. And then in the coming, in the weeks ahead, I'll start to announce, get ready because it's about to drop. And then another newsletter hit when it releases. And then if I'm able to, I'll coincide with the release. I'll try to get like a stack of promotions on earlier books in that series if it's a book in a series. So if I can get a book bub on the book 1 for Book of Deacon when I have a new Book of Deacon story coming out, I'll try to pull that either on launch day or in the days preceding launch day so that people can work their way through the series and hit on launch.
All right, yeah. For myself, I actually tried to do things when I released my first book back in, it was like the day before Christmas. I'm sure everybody was looking for books then, 2010, but there was not a whole lot you could do. It's like you kind of had to hand sell your books back then. Like, I remember there was Kindle Nation Daily. That was pretty much the one and only major sponsorship kind of site where you could buy ads and they would pimp your book. And then and I tried them. I think I got an ad there maybe 1 or 2 months into my author career, and it wasn't great for fantasy, I found. But so it was expensive even then. I think it was $150, and I think I might have got 25 sales of a $2.99 book. So you do the math there. That wasn't too great. I did try Goodreads advertising with the very first book and with the first couple books, and that was kind of okay. I'd spend like $2 a day and maybe sell a book, so I'd kind of break even. But it wasn't like I was selling so many books. I mean, I remember being really excited when I got to the point where it was like one a day. I had 2 novels out, and I was like, I'd still sell one of them, one a day.
I remember those days.
And I remember back then I tried the book bloggers, and I don't know how many people are really doing book bloggers. Book bloggers now, I feel like they're probably inundated, and it's tough maybe outside of booking a book tour where you're paying for something and there's money exchanging hands behind the scenes, like, oh, you want to review this book. But I still remember I got a book review on the Fantasy Book Critic, and those guys are still in business today. And it was a nice review, and I actually got quite a few sales from that. But everybody else kind of blew me off. They were like, we don't want self-published books. So it was very much for me always a slow build, like just very gradually. I wrote the second book, started making a couple more sales, wrote the third book, put the first one to 99 cents or free somewhere in there. And so it was like that, no big book launch. These days, it kind of depends if it's going to be a later book in a series. I tend not to do as much. Like Joe was saying, I might try to get some ads of the first book in the series, or if I've really kind of like checked out of the series and I'm just kind of obligatory finishing it for the fans, which happened this year with my Flash Gold book number 5. I pretty much just put it out there and said to Liz, "Hey, here it is if you want it." But if I think a book has a shot of actually, like if it's a book 1 in a series, and I think new readers might find it, and I'm hoping I might stick around on Amazon in the top of my category for a while, then I will actually put out the effort of, and we're going to talk about this later, kind of doing the slow burn book release strategy, which a lot of indies have had a lot of success with this last, I don't know, 3-6 months or so. So I won't spoil things. We'll talk about that more later. But I will say when I was starting from scratch with a pen name, that was about 1.5 years ago now, I wrote 3 books before I published any of them, and that really seemed to help. I made the first one 99 cents and then perma-free as soon as I could, bought some ads on the perma-free one. There are more sites now that will do ads for new releases. You don't necessarily have to have like 50 reviews and be discounting it. So that's more of a thing now. You can actually get ads on the early books.
Question for you,
yeah.
when you mentioned that that you released, when you created your pen name and you already had 3 books written, for those that might actually have some patience, out of curiosity, how long did it take you to write those 3 books and get them ready to be published?
That was kind of a summer project, and I was writing other stuff at the same time, so it was probably about 6 months, because I remember I was publishing some stuff under my regular name. That's the hard part with a pen name. You want to keep the income going on while you're banking these books so you can get started. And then if you have 3 books, you have to get 3 slots with your editor and all that sort of stuff. But I really feel like if you're starting out now, that's a pretty good strategy to look at, is really being able to release the first 3 books. If not at the same time, then back to back, and being able to follow it up with something pretty soon. And it's tough. When it's your first novel, you're probably not that speedy and efficient yet, and you're still working your day job, and you have 85 kids that you have to take care of. So I know it's easier said than done, and but that's sort of like a way to just throw it all out there at once. It gives you kind of an advantage and gets the momentum going, or it can. You still have to do other things to make it work. All right. Any more questions or responses for Dale about how your strategy differs now than when you were starting out?
Just a lot more forethought involved, because like I say, when you release a book, you are your own publicist. So if you want something to happen, you're responsible for doing it. So I have learned that since releasing the first one.
I guess the only other thing I can add to the way I used to do launches is I used to think that tiny little stupid things would have enormous impacts. Like the first book in my sci-fi series is called Bypass Gemini, despite the fact in the book the thing is called the Gemini Bypass, because I thought being alphabetically first would help.
Did it?
So, like, we'll start with no, of course not. Why would that help? People don't search for books alphabetically.
You would have had to change your name to something that was like Brad Sanderson.
Yeah.
Yeah. That might have helped. I will say too that these days I think a lot more about cover art and trying to think like a publisher. I suck at like writing to what's popular in the market. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. I can maybe write in a genre that seems to be selling well right now. That's kind of like my space opera sci-fi adventure series is like, well, all these people have been killing it with space operas, so maybe now is the time to write this story that's been in the back of my head for a couple of years.
Well, Star Wars is out there, and they've got more of them on the way, so popularity is high.
But as far as like hitting the tropes, I usually hate the tropes, so I just kind of do my own thing. But I do try to at least package it nicely, like
make sure that spaceship is on the cover and you're good.
I got a spaceship. I hope I'm good. But so that's more too. Just thinking like good cover art, trying to get a good blurb. In the beginning, I was like, okay, what can I afford? This guy does cheap stock photo cover art. That's what I'm getting. So.
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest change I've also done too. Is like when I first did it, my first book. Artist, I am not yet. I tried to make my own first cover there, and when I got to the second one, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to hire a professional artist to do this. They did a much better job, and the sales reflected that. So, get yourself a good cover.
Yeah, pretty much all the people I see on keyboards that like are hitting it out of the ballpark right now with either a new release, their first release, or more often it's like they've had other books out that didn't sell that well, but now they've got a new series that's actually taking off. All the time I'm like, those are awesome covers. It matters.
It really does.
All right, next question. Is genre hopping going to slow down or even hurt your career? Um, I guess I can go first with this because we all wrote down notes and I want to stay in order. So the question is genre hopping going to hurt your career? Yeah, probably it is, honestly. Um, Ideally, you would just be in love with urban fantasy or whatever it is and just write series after series in this genre, especially a genre that's pretty popular. When you jump around and, jump, at least when you're in science fiction and fantasy, maybe you'll get more crossover than if you're like in, I don't know, writing mystery novels about corgis on the side. That might we'll talk more about that later. That might be tough to get people to cross over. I feel like more people, like I had quite a few people cross over that do my steampunk slash swords and sorcery to the science fiction space opera stuff. Not true when I wrote a contemporary mystery slash sweet romance that did not follow any genre conventions whatsoever.
Yeah, I've got a response to that, but I will add that to mine when my turn comes around.
All right. The one time I think when genre hopping might actually be something worth considering is if you've written 3 or 5 books in a series in your genre and you're just really disappointed with the sales and you're not able to gain some traction. You never know. You might do better in a different genre. I was just listening to the self-publishing roundtable. They had Boyd Craven, I think is his name, on, and he said he started out writing romance and erotica, which you would think, oh, romance and erotica, you make tons of money. All you have to do is write romance and erotica. And, I think he was making a little money doing it, but then he started writing dystopian future stuff, and it became his like career maker. Like he's making really good money now with that series. So, but at the same time, don't have unrealistic expectations. I feel like because on keyboards and stuff, there's these, oh, I'm in the top 1,000 with my launch and making 10,000 a month with my book, that everybody thinks that's going to happen. But if you're like sub 50,000 in the Amazon store, you're really not doing that badly. So think about it before you throw that away. Okay, guys, thoughts on genre hopping? I'll let you talk.
All right, I agree that the genre hopping is probably, like, in general, not going to help you because essentially, like, I'm pretty much a 3-genre writer. I have sci-fi, steampunk, and fantasy, and all 3 of those series are sort of ongoing. Like, I don't have any. They're not. You can finish on the most recent book and no longer have the cliffhanger thing because while that sells the first couple books, well, the second couple books easier, if you just always end on a cliffhanger, people are going to get angry at you. But like each book has an obvious direction it could continue in, so I don't really intend on ending them anytime soon. And that essentially means that you're not one author putting out a book in 3 different series a year. You're essentially 3 different authors because the 3 different genres are going to have different audiences. You're not going to have 100% overlap on the stuff. And now that means that you're not an author putting out 3 books a year. You're 3 authors putting out 1 book a year. And the momentum that you might get with the rapid releases in a single series or in a single genre, you don't get anymore. Like some years I only put out 2 books, which means there are some times when one of my series goes 2 years between an entry. And that's no momentum at all. People might think that that series is over and all of those fans might go away. But at the same time, I find it's a lot easier for me to get excited about the new book I'm writing when it's not the same thing I've been writing for the last couple of months, when it's like a legit new experience. Like I can take my head out of fantasy and put it into sci-fi, and all of a sudden I can start throwing in pop culture references, and I have this set of characters back to mess with, and they've been percolating in the back of my head for 2 months while I was writing the last one. So it helps keep my brain fresh, but it kills my momentum. So for me, it's probably a wash, and I think for a lot of people, if you don't have that sort of enthusiasm for the new project, then it might not have any real positive.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more as well. I mean, that's one of the things I started my mystery series is I was getting kind of tired of the fantasy, not really burned out, just itching to try something new. And yeah, I mean, you're starting up an entirely new world. You have, with me, when switching genres, I mean, I had some of my fantasy readers switch over and just give it a try because they like the style of writing, but you pretty much have to pretend you're starting over from fresh. You have to build your fan base back up nice and slow. So, as Joe was saying, that loses your momentum in the other world because I tried with that 1 month to try and write both fantasy and mystery at the same time. I thought I could multitask. Not that I can't. I mean, literally, there's like smoke coming out of the ears. It just brain did not work that way. So I have to focus on one or the other. So naturally, whatever one you're working on, the other one, falters and it loses your momentum on it there. But anyways, speaking for myself though, I just know I can't multitask like that. So I enjoy doing something different. So as Joe was saying, working on the fantasy, and all of a sudden the brain starts going, I could have the mystery characters doing this and that'd be really cool. And I'd be working on the mysteries, like, oh damn, that'd be something cool to do with the fantasy. Each one inspires the other. So yes, to answer the question, yes, it will lose some momentum, but I mean, to me, it's necessary because I need to be able to, as Joe was also saying, keep your brain fresh. You got to keep sharp and keep inspired.
Right. And I think that's common for a lot of us. That's like we forget, all this stuff's like, here's the business advice you need to think about, and this is what you should do if you want to make more money and sell more books. But, we all are artists. It's hard to kind of make those two things meld sometimes, all the time. I'm the same way. Whatever I'm working on, like I'll have ideas for this other series I want to be working on. And it's hard. That's part of, starting to be able to get to the point where you can do this for a living is when, like, even when you're wanting to write something else, you're like, okay, I'm committed to finishing this book. Because I know when I first got started, I used to always start books, write 30 or 40,000 words, and then wander off and start something else. Or my characters were getting in kind of a tight spot, and I didn't know what to do. So I had just tons of abandoned manuscripts on the hard drive back there. But yeah, I will say the people that are killing it, they find their series, they get their awesome covers, it's in a popular genre, they're hitting all the tropes, and then they're releasing a book every 2 months, or even more often in some cases. So if you have that mentality and can do that, it's certainly an advantage right now in today's climate. I'm the same way with Joe. I have series that, like my Chains of Honor series, the first one is Warrior Mage, and when I released that, it did quite well. It's got a really cool cover, but I was working on my Dragon Blood stuff over here on the side. That was kind of the proven moneymaker at the time, and so it was a year later before I wrote book 2, and I released that, and it's done okay, and then it's going to be another year, I can tell, before I release book 3, and that will just kill you in today's climate. It's like, if you really want to gain the momentum and kind of be up there in the top of your category consistently, it's like you really got to have a new release every couple of months in the same series. So, and if you can't do that, that's understandable. But again, realistic expectations. Realize that most of the people who are killing it are just putting out books in the same series in a popular genre over and over. All right. Any more comments on genre hopping?
That about covers it for me.
All right. One more question, and I don't know who asked this one either, but I just remember this, and I think I answered it on YouTube maybe, is just how do you get beta readers? How do we get beta readers? Do you guys want to go first?
Sure. When I first started this, it was me pretty much pleading with someone because I wanted to find someone who didn't know me, didn't know my personality or anything, just a fresh set of eyes to take a look, and that's some of the best advice you can get. Now it's kind of nice. I can just put out a request to the fans on the Facebook page and said, hey, I'm getting ready to release the next fantasy or mystery. Can I pay me a couple of volunteers, and I can get 20, 30 people signing up within the next hour or two saying, hey, pick me, pick me, sort of things. And so then I look like, okay, well, who's got the best grammar skills and everything? So I can be picky. I can selectively choose who I want to actually get there. So for me, it just, once you build up a fan base, and it's just asking the fans for help, and you'd be surprised at how willing they'd be to be able to lend a hand.
Yeah, in my case, I started with the two friends who convinced, well, two of the several friends that convinced me to start publishing the stuff. They read all of my stuff, although one of them has refused to read one of the things that I've written. So I'm going to have to add at least one more person to my beta list. And I started with them, and they gave me a good spread of feedback, because one was very positive and one was very nitpicky. And then once I started to get fans, I would get emails every now and then from fans, and a lot of the emails are just, hey, I really like your stuff, I can't wait to the next book. But some of them will be like, I really like the way this character did this, and I feel like that character really, and they start to like pick apart the characters and pick apart plot points, not in a negative way, just in a like sort of analysis way. And I'm like, this is a potential beta reader, and I'll send them, whatever. And I've amassed about I think I have 10 beta readers on my usual list, and I expand it every now and then if it's a genre that maybe some of the beta readers don't like. And that's how I built my list of beta readers, was out of fans that were clearly analytical and gave good feedback, plus a handful of friends and family members.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Anytime you get an email from a fan that says, this is great, but I think it'd be better to do it this way, you're like, okay, let me bring up my beta list there. Okay, you just got added to the list, pal. So.
Yeah, I think that the ladies I have right now are mostly readers too, that I've kind of met online and chatted with and gotten to know. And it's kind of nice when you can get somebody on your team. Like, I have one gal that's a chemist for her day job, so whenever I have that kind of question, I'm like, okay, you're getting this. And another gal that's I've just added in the last year or so that has just awesome medical background knowledge. She knows everything about that kind of stuff, so it's great because I know nothing about these things. And when you have subjects like that, it's hard to just Google it. It's like you kind of need a foundation in that science in order to understand the answer on Google, so super helpful. But in the beginning, before you have readers, I was a part of an online writing workshop. It's called the Science Fiction and Fantasy Online Writing Workshop, and if you Google that, they are still in existence. I haven't logged in several years, so I don't know how it's going, but that's one. And critters.org is another one. Let me put down in my notes to add those things. But and I think Critters is free, but it's like you have to post 10 reviews of other people's stuff before you can post your story for review. So, and then the other thing, I think Science Fiction and Fantasy Online Writing Workshop, I think you post like 4 things, and then you can get people to review your stuff, and you put it up like chapter by chapter if you're doing a novel or a complete short story. And you start to, if you go back and forth with people a few times, you start to find people who say things that make sense to you and that are useful. And then that's kind of how my first handful of beta readers, we met that way. And I thought it was really useful to have other writers as beta readers, because they know what a Mary Sue is, whereas readers don't necessarily care and know about all the things you're doing that are possibly going to get you bad reviews, kind of thing. So that's really useful. I think the workshops are good. Sometimes if you live in a bigger city, you can find local workshops. I do personally think that one for your genre specifically is really useful. A lot of the local ones I've tried before have been like, I do a mystery novel, and here's my memoir, like another person, and another person's doing their space opera. And so it's good to, to some point anybody can give feedback, but sometimes it's good to get the people who are actually in your genre. They know the tropes. They know if you're breaking the rules, kind of like if you're writing romance, they need to know that there has to be a happily ever after. That's just the rule. That's how it is. If you write anything else that's not a romance. And so it's good to have people that actually know that and aren't going to suggest that you kill off the hero because he's a jerk. So that's kind of how I find my original people. And I know if you go to class, sometimes you can find classes and just anything locally you can get into, or online if you like that better. I always did. Local in-person stuff is scary. It's easier to accept criticism and give it online, I feel, as an introvert. I don't know about everybody else. But okay, so that's how we got our beta readers. Jumping in, we've kind of already been talking about our main topic, but jumping into kind of our news, I guess why don't we each talk about some recent launches we've done and what we did or didn't do, and like if it worked or if we wish we had done things differently. Who's going first?
I can go first. Let's see, I've actually released, a couple weeks ago, I released my first mystery novel. There's the cover for it. It's the Case of the One-Eyed Tiger, and it's a blast to actually write, because I was so used to writing in third-person omniscient, and this thing switched to first-person narrative, and it was just completely different. Although I have learned that if you're changing it up like this, and I went to essentially from a PG rating to PG-13 bordering on R, and you really have to specify that, or else those people expecting the happy, lovey-dovey, good, lighthearted adventure fantasy series look at the mystery and go, murder, body, I mean, look at all the language, what the heck? And then, of course, you get dinged for it. So I learned that. So, but when you're releasing this one, I hit my mailing list up, probably about a week and a half or so before, giving them a heads up, like it's about ready to drop, and then I did some Facebook advertising, and just keeping an eye on these, since this is my very first novel in KU, and it actually has been doing not too bad there, and I've been having people ask me, well, that's being polite. I've had people mention that it's no longer white and they can't read it on other platforms. I think, well, I'm trying this out, and the logic behind that being is I checked the category that I've researched. As a first for me, I researched the categories that this was going in, and I wanted to see what the ratio was of books in the top 20, who was in the KU and who wasn't. Numbers 1 through 19 were in KU, and number 20 wasn't. And just for kicks and giggles, I went to 21 through 40, and every single one of them was KU. I'm like, okay, well, I'm guessing favoritism here or whatnot, but it certainly couldn't hurt. So I made sure this time, just to give it a try, I put it in KU. But like I say, I tried the Facebook advertising. That's the very first time I have tried some of that, and I got to specify my target audience, and that worked out pretty well there too. So it was a lot of fun trying something completely new and taking me out of my comfort zone, just to say, okay, let's just see how well this is going to be received. And so far, so good.
Now, are you back to writing fantasy now, or are you gonna do like three in the mystery and then?
Well, the mystery one here is, I'm so used to writing epic fantasy where it's 100,000 plus, and the books that I modeled this one after, I don't know if you ever read like some of the Cat Who mystery books there from Lillian Jackson Braun, I think it is. So I was like, okay, let's go ahead and check the book length of those things. I found those things were on average 50 to 52,000 words long, and my wife starts laughing at me. She's like, there's no way in hell you can write something that short. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can do it. I didn't do it. I stretched up to close to 70, but these ones are a lot easier to write for me. So I mean, right now I was planning on going every other, but I say the fantasy is the money makers at the moment. So those are the ones I obviously can't stop it. But right now the plan is just every other book. So right now my next one, I'm working on the fantasy. Then I can probably write the mystery one really quick. I just can't do them simultaneously, I've learned. So just every other book will be just one mystery, one fantasy, one mystery, one fantasy.
Yeah, that's definitely the challenge when you start to depend on your income as a writer. You have to think like, oh, what am I going to do next? I'm pretty sure is going to sell. And then maybe when things are going pretty well with that one, you can have time to write the shorter one.
Right.
And I've done the same thing with the space opera. It's generally speaking, they tend to be shorter than like the epic fantasy. And I've actually only doing one point of view character in this series, and it's a little weird because you're very limited with what they know. But it makes it a lot easier to write short. I think the first one is about 75,000 words. The first three are all that. 4 is going to be like 85,000, but that's still short compared to when I 2 or even 4 point of view characters. There's no way I'm getting 4 point of view characters and it's going to be under 100,000 words.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Is like, I mean, this one is just from my main protagonist's point of view. That's his narrative. He's talking about how things are going, and there's so many times when I was writing that one, I'd switch over to, okay, now this person is thinking this. Oh, wait a minute. He's not going to know that. Yeah. And I don't delete the paragraph. Okay, I got to phrase that to this. And yeah, it was just really weird to switch writing like that. And then, of course, I tried that at the nighttime to work on the mystery, and then daytime for fantasy. You could smell the electrical circuits frying up here. It just wasn't working. So.
Yeah, I can't do 2 different novels at once. I don't even like it. Like, I'll start a new rough draft as the editor, and the beta readers have the other thing, and I kind of have to finish that rough draft, even if they finish editing and stuff and get it back to me. Like, I gotta just knock out this rough draft before I jump into another story. For sure. All right. Do you think, from just curious about because I did the KU2 thing also, because same deal with space opera. It's like KU. Look, number 27 is wide. Awesome. Exactly. For that guy. What do you think so far? Are you getting like more borrows than sales, or about even, or?
Right now, it's when it was first released, I was getting way more borrows than sales, and it's kind of leveling off at the moment. And every time I run a Facebook ad, of course, I watch the borrows go up. So I'm like, okay, so the Facebook is working with the ads, where it's getting more and more people to click on the ads that are doing there. So I know it's working. But right now, it's pretty much the same. So I mean. I'm glad for the experience. I'm not sure if I'll do it again. I'm not convinced yet that it's actually totally worth it, but I will give the 3 months on it just to see how it works.
Yeah, I have mostly sales. Like I just released mine last Thursday, so this is all really fresh in my head. Because most of my readers now are buyers. I've never done KU
Mhm.
before with my own name, and it's just now we're like 6 days into the release. The reads are getting up there, but in the beginning I was kind of thinking, was this even worth it? I'm sure people are borrowing it and it's helping with the sales ranking, but as my first thought is like, I don't know if I'm going to make much money with this unless I can stick up there and new people
Yep.
find it.
Yeah, I do the same thing. As like I was waiting after the first couple of days. I'm like, I'm watching that little blue line which shows like the borrows and whatnot. I was like, that's not really moving too much. Is this really going to be worth it? And I was like, day 4 or 5, I just went. I was like, oh, all right, okay, okay. All negative thoughts withdrawn here. So I'll just see how this plays out.
Yeah, I guess it's important to remember too that not everybody buys the book and instantly starts reading it. Like I'm like,
Exactly.
this has been out for 24 hours. Why are there hardly any page reads? What's going on?
Yeah, they're kind of like, okay, let's just check to see. Okay, that one looks good. I'll just put it on the Kindle and I'll get to it eventually. And eventually they get to it, and that's when it registers. But yeah, when it first came out, I was like, I just watched that line. It wasn't doing too much. I'm like, what's the big hype? I don't understand what the big deal about this is. 3 months I could be, and then it hit. I'm like, oh, okay, sorry.
For the Facebook advertising, what demographic are you targeting? Because I was just curious since you compared them to the Cat Who books, which I've read almost no mysteries, but I think I've read like 10 of those because my mom had them all on the bookshelf, and I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, cats, cats are fun.
Yeah, it was interesting when I first started that thing up. It came up and it said, "Okay, who do you want to target? What countries?" I don't know. I mean, pretty much I targeted every single Amazon store that I knew that I have made sales in. So predominantly the big ones, the U.S., UK, Canada, Germany, Italy, France. All those ones, all the main Amazon stores. Then I went, okay, so what people do you want to look for here? I'm like, I don't know. That's it. So I'm looking through it, going, okay, well, mystery lovers, that's a good one. Mystery fiction, okay. And I'm thinking like, who else can I target? Oh, dog lovers. Okay, there we go. So I put in dog lovers. I'm like, okay, well, what the hell? I mean, and it tells you right on the side on the screen there. It says, okay, your target audience is this, and every time you added like a group of people there, that number would jump. And so you want to try and target as many people as possible. So I ended up choosing like mystery fiction, mystery writer lovers, cozy fiction, cozy mystery. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them there, including like dog lovers, corgi lovers. I mean, there's a lot of corgi lovers out there, and just it kept on going from there. And I used that for the next ad, and it worked out well. I think my total people I could reach theoretically was like in the neighborhood of about 40 million, and that's a million with an M and two commas in there. I was like, I can get on board with this.
Are you doing anything? I'm not even sure if there's anything to narrow it down to Kindle people at all, like to make
Wow.
sure they're going to have an Amazon account and be an ebook reader.
You know what? That's a good question. I ought to, the next one I do, I ought to see if I can actually put in there like Kindle lovers or Amazon Kindle or Amazon, or I mean, put those keywords in there and see what happens. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I need to check on that too because I know you can with Apple. You can specify like it's coming from a Mac computer or an iPad, so you know that
Hmm.
they might be the iTunes store. But I'm not sure with Amazon. I think you can check Kindle, but we'll have to get somebody on that's a pro to let us
Yeah,
know.
definitely.
All right, Joe, do you want to tell us about your releases?
Sure. I'm doing what we'll call my next two releases, or one of them is already out. So my next release and my current release are two parts of the same experiment, sort of. I had a situation where both of my editors were able to move me up way earlier than I'd expected. So I had two fully edited books that were going to be done within the same 2 week span. And they're in different genres, so releasing them simultaneously would sort of kill any possibility of crossover and momentum. So I was left with the decision of having to make it delay one of the releases by 2 months or release one of them 2 months early. And 2 months early would have been that day. So I put up I asked the fans if they would want me to when they would want me to release my next book, and they said today, and I said okay, and I released it that night. And so this is a book release that was a surprise to everyone, including me. So that's my most recent release. There was no run up to it at all. People knew I was writing it. They knew that I was almost done. They knew it was an edit, but they didn't know it was coming out until it was already out. And a few things I learned with this is, well, first off, how's it doing? It's only been out a week. It's hard to tell how it's doing. It was a relatively cheap edit, and it was a relatively cheap cover. So with those two things combined, it's pretty close to getting itself paid back just on first week sales. So that's fairly good. And it's hard for me to gauge, like, compare it to my previous releases, because usually I have a long pre-order period, and therefore my first day of sales is actually a combination of the preceding 3 months. So I really won't know how this compares to other releases for 3 months when I can look at the 3 month sales and compare it to the pre-order period. But so far, so good. The only thing that's different about this one is because I also didn't do any e-arcs, which is another thing I do as book launches. I didn't mention earlier, as I started sending out a fair amount of e-arcs so I can get early reviews. I didn't send out any e-arcs, so it's going to be a long time before I have a reasonable count of reviews on this thing. And so that's the current release. The next release that I'm doing, the experiment on that is normally, as I said, I would do like a 6-month pre-order and then a 3-month pre-order on the two different, everywhere but Amazon, and then 3 months on Amazon. This one, I'm only doing 2-month pre-order overall, and I'm going to do virtually no pre-order on Amazon. I think I'm going to try for a 2-week pre-order, just longer than the 10 days, but just so that I can have them release on the same day. I'm probably not even going to really push the Amazon pre-order. And that's because, as we've spoken about on the show earlier, in earlier episodes, a pre-order on, say, Apple helps a lot because it gives all of those pre-order sales as day one sales and gives you a ranking boost. On Amazon, they don't do that. They apply the ranking when you get the pre-order, and therefore you sort of spread out your release numbers. So I'm going to try to, best of both worlds and do a short or, non-pre-order on Amazon and a reasonable length pre-order on other places, and see if I can have a really good launch in that way. So we'll find out about that toward the end of July, because it's launching on July 14th.
Yeah, what I did with the Space Opera book one is I put it the pre-order up on like the 20th of May, and it releases on the 26th. So I really wasn't trying to get any sales. I didn't tell anybody about it, but I think it had like 150 sales or something. So it was enough that the also bots were populated on day one, which I've heard is useful, because usually if you notice you just publish it, it might take a couple days before you start showing up, and before you get a sales ranking and start showing up in different other books also bots. So, but I agree. I've done in the past, I've done Amazon like probably 2 months out with my Dragon Blood books, where I knew they were like 5, 6, and 7 in a series, so it wasn't gonna be like I'm getting a lot of new readers. Do you find, because I've never done like the real long one like at iTunes, or is it only iTunes, or Barnes & Noble allows a long one too?
iTunes, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo all can let you go up to 6 months.
What are your thoughts in doing that? Do you feel like you get a lot more sales? Does it help a lot on release day, or I know you've done that a couple times now. Like, does the 6 or 9 month pre-order actually help out there?
It helps. I do reasonably well on iBooks. iBooks is one of my better places, and it helps a fair amount there. Like the second time I did it was Free Wrench, which is the first steampunk book, and Free Wrench since then and continues to be my best-selling series on iBooks. So I don't know if it was a result of that or just good timing with the release, or if it was just a better than average book. But I shot up in the ranks, as happens, because I had a lot of sales in the 6 months that it was pre-ordered, and it really has stuck like reasonably high. It's not top, but actually it still might be top 100 in the sci-fi category. So that it helped with that one. I haven't seen nearly that same amount of help with the other books that I've done long pre-releases for. And worth pointing out, Free Wrench was the first in a series, and every other book I've done a pre-order for has been at least the second in a series. So, and that's the same thing. That's the other thing with this, is the one that I did the surprise release on. It is hard to even place where exactly in the series it is. It's at least the 6th full-length novel in the series, but it's sort of not a numbered novel. It's sort of referred to as a side quest, because you can sort of skip it and not miss the rest of the stuff. So this was not going to be a giant launch anyway, which is why I felt okay doing the surprise.
I looked at the blurb, and I like that. You're like, this is a little side quest, and it's like 400 pages or something.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's a complete novel.
Yeah, it's by the way, the story behind this one, not the plot, but I mean the way it was written. There was a collection. Somebody wanted to do a first in a serial collection. It was called Experiments and Enchantments, and I didn't have a serial. So I was like, I'll write a chapter 1 of a serial, and if people don't end up liking it, I just won't write the rest of the chapters. And this is the serial. This is the serial that was chapter 1 for, and I wrote it as a serial. And once I got toward the end, I was like, there's not a whole lot of reason to release this as a serial. So I just turned it into a novel.
Oh, you mean it started out small and just went?
Yeah. If you were to follow me on Twitter for like a couple of months ago, you'd see me. I was posting the Scrivener goal and then what my current word count was, like that little meter. And it was like, goal 45,000 words, current word count 60,000 words. And I changed it to 75,000 word goal, and then it was 95,000 words. I think the final total is 125,000 words. So
what did that work out to be? Like, okay, he's got there 410% done there.
Darn right. Anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
There you go.
But it's just a side quest.
Just a side quest. It happens in between books 3 and 4. And you can only really know that if you really pay attention to clues. So even that's confusing. That's a great goal, is to just confuse your readers with everything.
All right, so I'm curious, have you done anything with pre-orders and doing lower prices than you actually, like I've seen some people now that are doing 99-cent pre-orders or $2.99 pre-orders, and then they're going to release it, like put it up to $3.99 on release day as a chance to reward, early buyers and also to maybe get more sales of the pre-orders in the bag. Have you tried that at all, or do you have any thoughts on that?
I haven't tried the lower cost pre-orders. I really think that's worth trying, because I mean, even if for nothing else, you're just rewarding people for being early buyers of your stuff. That's a good behavior for your readers to have, is to pick it up early. So and plus, even if you're not trying to groom your audience to pick up your book early, just it's a way of saying thank you for trusting that this will be a good book. So I think it's worth doing. I just honestly didn't think of doing it with this most recent set. And I'm not going to do it now because, actually, that's the interesting thing about pre-orders. If you drop the price of the pre-order while it's in the pre-order stage, people pay whatever it costs on the release day. So you can say retroactively, right up until the last day of the pre-order, you know what? No, now it's a 99-cent pre-order. But that would be a weird decision to make, because then you would lose any of the potential, gain from having a low cost. But at the very least, you'd be rewarding the people who pre-ordered.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that I've never done it either. I always this is just the price. This is how it is. These books are $3.99. But I'm thinking about it for my 8th Dragon Blood book, which I'm kind of thinking about for this fall after I finish the sci-fi stuff, or at least get it to a spot where it's hopefully doing well. I have 6 point of view characters planned, so we all know how that's going to go. I had 4 in the last 2 books, and they were like 120,000 words, so 6 could easily get me up to 200,000 words if it follows a past pattern that I've had. So I'm thinking that one should be at least $5. But I thought, well, I'll do a $3.99 pre-order, and then anybody that buys it early will get it for less. Yeah. Okay, though, I guess let me jump in. I've already talked about my new series a little bit. And like I said, I did nothing with the release of the 5th Flash Gold novella. Those don't sell well. I know at this point, the series has been out for like 4 years. No matter what advertising I do for the first novella, which is hard anyway, being a novella instead of a full-length novel, you can't get ads in most places. That it's just not gonna. This series is never. It's a niche thing. It's like steampunk, historical in the Yukon. It's not like one of the traditional Victorian steampunk things, and steampunk anyway is not a huge genre. So didn't even really put any effort into it. But since I was jumping into this new genre, new to me, doing a science fiction adventure series, I really wanted to give it the best shot I could. I said here before, I was reading Chris Fox's Right to Market book, and he actually outlines the tropes for space opera, and I was like, yeah, I don't have that. I don't have that. Don't have that. This is going to be a bestseller, definitely. But I wanted to give it a good chance. I've never had one really hit it out of the blocks on book 1 either. I mean, I'll get stuff that might debut at 200 in the Amazon store, but usually that's just the early readers all buying it at once, and then it gradually falls. I've had stuff stick in the 1,000 to 2,000 range, and I've had my box set stick at 200 for a long time after a really good book club ad, but usually my stuff is not the sticking, because it just happens to be so hot and so trendy that of course everybody's going to read it. But so I wanted to give this as good a shot as I could, so I wrote the first 3, had them in the bag, got them all edited. I put the first one out on the 26th, just a few days ago, and the next one on the 27th, a day later. I have the third one. I just sent some typos that my typo hunters found after my editor. I'm going to get it out later this week, so it'll end up being a week later from the first two. It's off to a good start so far. What I've tried to do is what we kind of talked about or alluded to, and we're going to kind of hit some points on in a few minutes, is the slow burn kind of launch that I was saying that is doing well now. I've long known, and you've probably known too, that if you get a BookBub ad and sell 2,000 copies at once, all that's going to happen is you shoot up in the rankings for a couple of days and you gradually drop off. It seems to be that the Amazon algorithms kind of ignore you for if you get all your sales in 24 or 48-hour period, and then you just settle back down to where you were. So what a lot of people are doing successfully now is launching books and trying to stagger things. They're segmenting their email lists to like gradually build. Here's some go out today, some go out the next day. Like, so they're doing their launches over like 2 weeks. And as I said before, now there are some sites like e-reader news today, free Kindle books and tips, and I'll put a link in the show notes to talk about some of the sites that actually accept new releases. Sometimes they'll just accept it if it looks good. Sometimes you have to have had other books that you've advertised with them that have 20 reviews or 50 reviews. But they are accepting some new releases, so you can rely on more than just your mailing list now. So what I did is I booked a few of those over a 2-week period. Some people really do a good job and find lots of little spots that they can do, so they have something coming out every day, basically, an ad somewhere. And I kind of divided up my email list, so I had 3 different days I could email different people. And so far, I think it's doing pretty good. It's like, I looked at the before here. We're 6 days into it, and it's 270-something in the Amazon store. I think it's falling now. I've kind of run out of people I can email and say, buy my book. I do have some Facebook ads going. Facebook and I are not huge. We don't have a big relationship. I try them every time somebody's on and says they're killing it with Facebook ads. I'm like, oh, let me give this another try. But this is sort of the one time when it seems like maybe it's worth spending more than I'm making, because I have more books in the series if they buy book 1 that they can go on and buy. And I'm planning to write at least 5 of these. I'd like to do like 8 if they sell well. It's a little early to see how things will go, but I've just tried to give myself as many opportunities for the series to do well, even though, like I said, it's not necessarily written to genre. I got the cool cover with the spaceship, you know. What more can you ask for? So far it's going well. And this is my first thing in Kindle Unlimited under my name. The pen name's been in KU for a while, so I know it has the potential. And I guess I can report back probably in a couple months. It'd be more useful to look back and see how things went, because it's, like I said, it's not easy, but it's possible to spike things up to top 200 in the Amazon store, but then usually for most of us mere mortals it will fall off. So yeah, do you guys have any questions for me, or shall I jump into those? I have a couple Kboards posts I wanted to talk about real quickly before we sign off.
I think I'm good.
I'm not that fascinating, I know.
Well, we tend to go very long with these episodes, and I'm interested in the little summaries we've got on the list coming up. So.
Okay, so there's just been, like I said, there's been several Kboard posts where people have done well, and not necessarily like the old strategy was just like, get as many people on your mailing list as you can, and then blast the book to them, and you'll become a bestseller, and get enough people, and eventually you can. But we're kind of seeing the same as the BookBub effect. If you hit your mailing list with 5,000 people all in one day, you don't have that chance necessarily to stick. And I guess that's what all this is about. I don't know if I actually said that, is you're hoping you're up there long enough that people who are not in your sphere of influence start seeing your book at the top of the rankings and start buying it. And we're kind of theorizing that it takes a week to 2 weeks. And that's kind of what one of the posts I was checking out says. It's called The Slow Burn Launch for Stickiness by Amy Easterling. And she was just kind of pointing out what she did as someone who had not had any huge bestsellers in her backlist. She had some other series out, but she was trying something new. And she managed to get it, I think, to stick in the top 1,000 for quite a while, which, if you've previously been selling books in the top 100,000 or top 50,000, that's a huge difference. You're suddenly thinking like, wow, I could make a living from this money. And just some of the notes we've already kind of talked about, she was saying, like, books are rarely sticky after the book Bub effect, or if you get a lot of sales in 1 or 2 days. So she was one of the people that was stretching it out, buying ads over like 2 weeks. And one thing I thought was interesting is she emailed her list in waves every 12 hours, starting with the least engaged and working toward the most engaged. And I think Chris Fox might have said this either on our show or another show too. Like you don't want all your best sales on the first day. You kind of almost want it to gradually build. Try to get 100 sales today, 150 tomorrow, 200 tomorrow, the day after that. And you'll have to look at your specific mailing list provider. But usually, if you're paying, if you've moved beyond the free offering, they have this kind of thing where you can segment it and not send all of the emails at once. And there's a lot of indies who've just been doing really well with this kind of strategy of trying to stagger things. And as we've kind of talked about here today, pretty much all these people I've looked at on K-boards, I always click everybody's books and go snoop around at their stuff. They're all in Kindle Unlimited. It is what it is right now. It's just a huge advantage on Amazon to be in it since all the borrows get counted as sales at this point in time. And a lot of these people also, and I didn't mention it, my first book, I'm launching it at 99 cents. And my plan is to, currently, once it starts dropping, if it's like when it gets below 500 or above 500, I'll probably put it up to $2.99. The other books in the series are $3.99. It's still cheaper and a way to get in. With KU, price may not matter quite as much, but it seems like 99 cents will get you the people that have maybe never seen you before and are not in Kindle Unlimited, so it can be useful when you're just doing this launch and really trying to build the momentum so that you'll actually stick. All right, do you guys have any thoughts on that one? Questions? I'll pretend I'm Amy and can answer. Maybe we should get her on the show. I think she was doing urban fantasy or something like that.
I wonder what newsletter engine she's using that actually can tell her the least engaged and most engaged.
I think Aweber will do it, and I think MailChimp will do it, but you have to be paying. I know like MailChimp has up to 2,000 free. Sometimes you have to be paying for the next
tier.
Yeah, like it's not the most basic thing.
Yeah, I think the free version of MailChimp, well, the one I have, I think I give it a star rating to different levels of subscriber. So I imagine that's in some way an indication of engagement. And there's also when you do a new campaign, it will give you a list of like most opens per email address, and you can sort of, I don't know if that must be accessible through other reports, but in the summary report during a campaign launch, it's got that there.
Right. I think they're going to be relying on who's actually clicked on your links in the past to judge how engaged that particular subscriber is.
Cool.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I can add to this is that this sudden release, just by necessity, actually, it sort of had a slow burn. Again, I'm only a week in, so I can't gauge success. I mean, I didn't hit number 200 or anything like that, but by necessity, just because it like rolled out to different places at different speeds, because it didn't have that nice little alignment that occurs with pre-orders. So it got hit with, okay, here for it's available for people on Amazon now. And to be fair, the slow burn is not about doing it on different locations, it's about doing it on the same location in different chunks. But I definitely saw an upward slope on the first few days because I had multiple announcements. So it certainly works to, you can do it, even if in a little small way without too much planning.
Right. And I should say my Flash Gold store is probably not selling as well as your as your new release. So just because you didn't get the 200, but see, you didn't scheme and plot and do all the things I did. Next time
we'll see. Yeah,
let us know.
I did the opposite of scheming. I was like,
I've been like since February. I'm like, what am I gonna do? And I still feel like I didn't do nearly as much as like Chris Fox did. We're gonna have him back on July, and he'll tell us all about how he sold 50 zillion books.
Naturally.
All right. Oh, and of course, we should say that this is all for Amazon. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be Amazon centric, but all these people who are doing this, like I said, they're in KU, and so these are the things that are working on Amazon. I don't really notice the pattern so much on the other stores. It seems like if you have readers already, you'll sell to them. But as far as being found by a lot of random people, I still feel like the permafree works pretty well on Kobo and Barnes & Noble. maybe on iTunes too.
Does for me.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't seem to be as much like you can really hope the algorithms will just fall in love with you if you do these things. But
Yeah.
maybe maybe we'll get somebody on who's making all their money at iTunes and
I can tell you, by the
humble.
way, if you're looking for patterns on Google Play Books, it will confound you. There seems to be absolutely no correlation between what I'm doing and how I'm selling on Google Play Books. So, like, I got to share the graph without numbers on it just so people can see. There are spikes. There's two big spikes on the graph. They don't coincide with BookBub sales or new releases or anything. They just happened. So I don't know if the algorithm is constantly in flux on Google, but I cannot tease out any sort of successful technique.
A book club that uses Google Play, you never know.
Could be.
I just know that every now and then I'll get a reader asking me why I don't have X book on Google Play, and then I have to go in and add it because I've got most of them on there now, but I didn't bother with some of the short stories and stuff. And I think I make like $100 or $200 there a month, so it's not no money. But I'm the same way. It's not like, oh, I had a BookBub ad. My Google Play is going to be awesome this month. I think we've got our box set is on there, so that probably helps. Having some permafreeze again.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming up on the hour, so I'll just briefly go over the highlights, and I will put a link to these not blog posts, Kboard's posts, so you can actually go read them because a lot of them have links to other stuff, like sites where you can get advertising for a new release. I think we are show 82 this week, maybe, but we'll title it genre hopping and product launches, or book launches. So come on by the site if you're looking for these links. But the other one was that Nicholas Eric put this together, a mini guide to launch promo services, and he had a big list of sites that are now accepting new releases. And I just wanted to read this thing he had. The opening, he said. Apparently this is show 83, guys. I've been corrected in the side notes. But he said, why put all this effort into a launch? Because actually something we've talked about before and other authors have talked about is like, as an indie author with ebooks, they're forever. If it doesn't do well at the launch, maybe later down the road you'll get do an advertising campaign or get in a box set or do a BookBub and you get a second chance. And that's true. But I thought Nick said it well here. He says, the launch is kind of like free money on Amazon. Your book isn't dead on arrival if you don't hit it, but they provide certain advantages, emails, visibility lists, algorithm benefits, that make getting off on the right foot a good idea. Dumping the same amount or more into a promo stack 6 months down the line just won't have the same effect that it does in the first month of release. And, I think that's true. I think if you actually can hit it and stick, like I said, I've never had anything stick really high and sell tons and tons, but I think my first Dragonblood book was in the top 1,500 on Amazon for a couple months, and that adds up. That's good money. That's you're selling a pretty good amount, even if you're not in the top 100 or top 500. So it's possible to stick at different levels, and maybe that will just be dependent on your genre and that kind of thing. And if you can get it there and it just keeps selling for a couple months before it kind of fades away, that's really good money. It's worth putting some effort into trying to make your launches solid. Do you have any thoughts on that, guys? Oh, don't know.
Yeah, pretty much
Talking too much.
cry all the way to the bank.
I can say this, talking about like the advantage you get from a good release, like emails. This is another point of comparison for the sudden release where I didn't have a build up and the gradual release from my previous one. Amazon, you can follow a person's author page, and Amazon will occasionally invite you to inform the people who follow your author page that you have a new release. This is by invitation only. My previous release, I got that request, and my email, I therefore was able to send out an email to basically 900 extra people. It was like a separate mailing list almost. This time around, I have not received that invitation. So it's an example where I think having a pre-order and having a pretty big first day was probably what got me that invite.
I will tell you, I've never had that invitation, and my pen name gets that invitation every time.
Golly.
The pen name does not sell as many books, so I don't know. It seems like the pen name is in KU, so I wonder if maybe that biases them a little bit.
And your pen name is sci-fi, right?
Sci-fi romance.
I have only been given the invitation for a sci-fi book.
But I haven't received it yet but I didn't get that invitation this time with this release, but I was told by some people that they followed my page. I tried one of those giveaways where they have to follow your page on Amazon, and they have a 1 in 10 chance of getting a free book. And so somebody told me that they received an email from Amazon because they follow my page that the book was out. So maybe Amazon is not always letting you, because I know what you're talking about. The pen name gets that. Like, you can actually personalize the message and it goes out.
So
All
interesting.
Right. I don't know. It's random. It's Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon. We love you, Amazon, if you're listening.
Please come on our show and tell us how to sell more books. All right. So what is his name? Nicholas was also saying, he gave a list, and that's why I want to link to this in the show notes, episode 83, of a number of the sites that had no review requirements and were taking new releases. And he also mentioned that you should try it if you can. It's useful to launch around one of the big, now we've started to see multi-author promos where everybody is just invited in a certain genre. And basically, they'll list your book, and you email your list on the day of the promo. And Patty Jensen, I've mentioned before, does a big one every month. So if you can kind of work your promo around one of those, or work your launch around one of those, that's just one more spot you can hit where maybe you'll get, and you don't have to get 200 sales. Like I was saying, you can stick at a lower ranking. Like if you just get, if you can get 10 or 20 a day for the first 2 weeks, that can be enough for you to stick maybe in the top 2,000 or the top 5,000. So check out, Kate Ward's is a place to follow a lot of these. She's kind of started with sci-fi and fantasy, I think, and I've now seen a mystery one and some other ones that, and she'll have like 100 books that are 99 cents for the weekend or are free for the weekend, and everybody blasts their list. So you just get tens of thousands of people coming to look at this page and check out the books on there. Another thing Nicholas mentioned, that if you can get it, cross-promotion through another author's mailing list that's in the genre, that's really gold. Most authors hoard their mailing list and aren't just going to oh, sure, I'll plug your book that I've never read and I've never heard of you. But if you develop a relationship with someone, you never know, maybe they'll actually try your book. I think Chris Fox got Nick Webb. Did I say his name right? There's all these Nicks going around to mention to his book, to his list, and so we got like 500 sales on day one from that. I mean, we should all be so lucky, right? So networking can definitely help, and it's never too early to start, right? Start 6 months out. But yeah, and then he just finished it saying this may be the one time it's worth throwing some money at some Facebook ads, even if you're not making as much from the ads, the affiliate income and book sales as you are spending. It's totally up to you and what makes sense and what you can afford. But this is probably maybe this 2-week session of your launch, you might want to consider trying it. All right, I had more questions, but we've been talking for an hour or so. Do you guys want to just wrap it up?
Sure.
All right. We're ready to go out and get the drinking on or something, whatever happens at night here. All right, we'll just leave those questions for another time. Okay, well, thanks for listening to us ramble for an hour and 5 minutes, apparently.
We love to ramble, you know it.
Yep, and you can find I'll get the show notes up at marketingsff.com, episode 83. Thank you, Joe. And if you haven't left us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, other places where this podcast comes, or even YouTube, our channel, you can come by and give us a thumbs up. We would definitely appreciate it. Thanks for listening. I hope your book launches go well. Good night, everyone.
Take it easy.
Or good day, everybody. Whenever you're listening. Bye.
Bye-bye.